everybody. It's June 20th, and we're finally back on trail, and we're in Oregon. And we just, I don't know, maybe 4 miles in. And I'll show you what we're looking at. Yeah, I mean, I don't see any blazes. Do you? We're off. So you think we should just follow our footprints out?
Yeah, I guess so. Shit.
I know. I thought that there would be snow, but like just patches here and there, and you'd still be able to see the trail.
Yeah.
But there isn't a trail. I mean, it is kind of early to be in this section, isn't it?
It is. It is kind of early. I guess people don't get in here till July or August.
Yeah, usually mosquito season.
And, you know, they've had an unusual amount of snow, too.
Oregon has, yeah. Everyone has. Yeah. So we're trying to make a decision. We're on video here, Jim. We started off just a little bit ago, a couple hours ago, and there was no snow initially. Then we hit all snow, and we're going up, and we can't find a trail.
Yeah, I have to pull out the GPS every 30 seconds to find the trail because it's so snow is deep and obscures any trace of it. So
yeah.
It's like, this is not fun when you have to do that.
And
we have to go
scary.
up in altitude,
yeah.
And so there'll be even more snow. And it just makes progress extremely slow.
It's also cold.
Yeah.
How cold did you say?
No, I thought it's in the 50s, but
it feels colder because we're walking in the snow.
So I don't know what we're gonna do.
You may have come too far north.
Too soon.
In our flip.
Yeah, but there's very little choices we had because we couldn't do the Sierra, and the other Northern California sections, mountains probably have as much snow as this, if not more.
And that's much higher elevation.
And you know, the whole West Coast has had abnormal amounts of snow, including, you know, Oregon and Washington. So it's a conundrum.
Yeah. So I think we're going to follow our tracks since we're off trail right now.
Yeah.
And try to get back on trail.
We'll backtrack and figure something out here.
We'll be back. So look at the moss and I guess it's lichen on this tree. It's amazing. It goes all the way up. And there's some more on this one. Looks like blonde hair hanging off the tree. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
It's Wednesday, June 21st, and when we talked to you yesterday afternoon, we had decided to turn around and retrace our steps out of the snow and back to where we started. So we will get into town, Chemalt, today, and then spend the day doing research to figure out our next plan.
The problem was that the trail here at lower elevations, it's wonderful and buttery and great to hike on, but we have to get up over these mountains, and we're now in the Cascades. So where we're at right now is just north of Crater Lake in Oregon. And the lower elevation trails are wonderful, but when you climb, you start hitting snow. And by about 6,800 feet elevation, we ran into snow that was probably 30, 40 inches deep and it completely obscures the trail. So then you have to use your GPS every 20 feet to realize, to navigate through this, which is exhausting and time consuming. And there's no tracks, so you can't follow anyone else's tracks.
Yeah, that's the other problem. So no one's really out here. There are a few notes on the far out that there have been maybe 2 people that have come through this way, and they're long gone now.
Gone,
and we don't have tracks to follow.
There's been some recent snow at higher elevations that probably has obscured whatever track they made. And on top of that, we were a little bit early for Oregon. We had hoped there would be a smooth going, or at least a track to follow through the snow up at higher elevations, but there's not. So that starts a process of evaluating what to do. And part of that is we have supply drops every 100 miles or so. And I'm sure over these mountains there'll be snow, and when you go lower, of course, there won't be, but it slows you down. So then pushing through that snow, you don't make the miles you need to make your supply drop in time, so you run the risk of being out of food for God knows, could be days if you're not making the miles you need to make every day because you're slowed down with the snow, forcing you to crawl through and navigate with your GPS. So that complicates things significantly. And on top of that, you have to consider that if you don't make your miles, you have to make miles in order to hit water sources and camping spots. And so if the snow slows you down, you could be in a situation where it's dark, you're still working your way through the snow. That makes everything much more difficult and dangerous. So we thought it's best to back out and come back down to lower elevation and find a camping spot and consider other options. So I think it probably needs another month to melt sufficiently up there to find the trail. And so then what do we do for a month? That's kind of the question we have. And on top of that too, we could have, we suspect it's the same problem everywhere here in the Northwest and the PCT, that we could have gotten on, north of the Sierra in California and have experienced the same issue, because the whole West Coast has had record snowfall last winter, and so that's going to be the problem everywhere. We looked at the snow reports before we came up here and hoped it was sufficiently melted for us to get through, but we just don't feel comfortable doing it with what's up there right now.
Yeah. So we're running over a bunch of different options, and we hope today with internet we'll be able to look at some of those, because the good news is that so far in this journey neither one of us have gotten injured, and the whole goal is to utilize the 6 months to be in nature, doing the things that we love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And really don't want to lose that opportunity, but we also have to feel confident and safe. I mean, we're okay taking certain risks, and believe me, we've taken some risks already on this trip, but but then you reach a point where if both of you are saying this is dumb, then you really have to honor that. And that's how we were feeling yesterday, because if you can't find the trail, then you're wandering around aimlessly in the forest and likely going to have somebody rescue you, which we do not want to have to do.
No.
So
you don't want to be in a situation where one decision starts to compound and exacerbate all the other ones, because then it starts to multiply on one another, and then you get in a real dangerous situation. So Maybe we're being overcautious. I'm sure
But we have
some
to,
young people
yeah.
have pushed through it,
Yeah, they have.
but it's not for us.
Yeah. So we have to feel confident, and we're not. So we're gonna figure it out, and so far we're getting along fine. We're not upset with each other or blaming each other. We're doing good.
Yes, everyone asks, when if we're
When
going
are
to get
you?
divorced.
Yeah, show
No.
us you're arguing. Show us you're fighting, but we don't really fight. I mean,
No.
we've had a few moments, but mostly we've been in agreement, and that's what I think makes us good hiking partners.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we'll keep you posted, and we'll be back in touch soon. I'll show you where we're at. It's a very pretty location. So it's a spur trail off of the PCT where we found there is some nice camping. We set our tent up. How cold would you say last night?
We got down to 30.
Yeah, it got chilly. Everything was frosted over this morning, including our shoes. But we've had a chance to just linger and let our tent dry out. There was a lot of condensation this morning in it. And there is actually, I think it's like a day use area during the season, and there is a pit toilet and a parking lot. Oh, and then last night, because we are now back in bear country and we're no longer in the desert, we've had to change some of our routine when it comes to managing our food, and I'll have Jim explain that a little bit. And there's a picnic table. So what we realized is that we've been pretty lazy so far in Southern California with how we've been managing our food, because we've been counting on the rattlesnakes to take care of the rodent population, and we haven't had to deal with bears. So we've pretty much not been hanging our food, and our food has been pretty much just outside our tent in the vestibule, and there's never been an issue. But we are no longer in that part of the country, and we are definitely in an area where you're going to need to hang your food and not eat anywhere near your tent.
All the bear safety
Stuff applies
again. So the problem here, and Shelley will show you in a minute, like these trees, beautiful pine forests, but all the trees are like telephone poles. So usually with a bear hang, you want to find a tree that has a horizontal branch about, 15 feet, 20 feet above the ground, and you throw a rope over it and you can lift your food sack. And it has to be at least 4 feet from the trunk of the tree so the bear can't, climb the trunk and reach over and grab your bag. That's the perfect hang, but with telephone pole type pine trees, you don't have branches like that, which makes things more complicated to keep your food safe. So what people do is they do the 2-tree method. So you throw your rope over one tree with a small branch sticking out, and then throw it over a second tree with a small branch sticking out, and then connect your food bags to the rope, and you lift it up, and so it's hanging between the 2 trees at the proper height.
I should have taken a picture of it, but I didn't think, and it was perfect. Jim did a great job.
Yeah, but it's an enormous pain in the ass because it's hard to find the trees, some trees with the right branches that stick out that you can get the rope over and are strong enough to hold the weight, that are the right distance apart, not too far apart because you only have 50 feet of rope, and not too close because then the bear could reach. And it's a pain at the end of the day, and it takes repeated efforts to get the rope on the proper branch. But that's what you have to do, and having a bear canister would make things much easier. We've ordered those. That way you can just set the canister out on the ground a couple hundred yards from your tent, and the bears can't get into it.
Yeah, we were back and forth about that because the canisters weigh about a little over 2 pounds. They're heavy. But honestly, I think just in terms of reducing the aggravation at the end of the day, like, it would be worth it. Because I just can see that becoming, after day in and day out of having to, at the end of the day, find a place to hang. So hopefully when we do get to this part of the trip, we will be able to use our bear canisters. So all right, more later.
All right, so a few weeks ago I started the rules of hiking, and I've only got to 2 rules, so I'm way behind. So the third rule, rule number 1, was Mother Nature doesn't give a shit. So she doesn't care about your welfare. You have to look out for yourself and be cognizant of what Mother Nature can do. Prepare for that. Number 2 is hydration. That was very important, especially in the desert, but anywhere. You've got to keep your body full of water and electrolytes. So rule number 3, which I'm going to show you now, is what I call 98.6. That's keeping your body temperature at 98.6. Very important, and if you can do that, you'll not have any problems. So that's this is a more involved kind of rule, so it requires a lot of different aspects. So one of the things is for 98.6, obviously a tent, keep you out of the elements and dry, and that's a very important thing, is keeping things dry. You want to have a plastic liner in your bag, in your backpack, that you put clothing in, and your sleeping bag or quilt, because it's absolutely critical that these things remain dry. If you're hiking in the rain or snow, they have to be dry. If you don't have a dry piece of clothing and something to sleep in, you will get hypothermia. So if everything else goes to hell, you've got to make sure that this stuff remains dry. So I have a 20-degree down quilt. I find these more comfortable than sleeping bags. I don't like that burrito feeling in a sleeping bag. So Shelly got me this great quilt. It's 20 degrees. It's been very comfortable, but when it gets down to below 30, you really need a liner. And this is just they call this a Sea to Summit Reactor sleeping bag liner. So it adds about 10 to 20 degrees of warmth to whatever bag you have. And I've slept in this down to 20, 25 and been very comfortable. You also need a proper mattress pad. So we have this Big Agnes insulated mattress that does well down to about 30 degrees. We wanted to, another consideration, it's insulated, but it's also very comfortable because you need to get a good sleep out here for your body to repair and restore itself. So this works well down to about 30 degrees. Then over here that I'm on is a foam pad that you can use in colder temperatures to put under your air mattress, or even in a pinch you could sleep on it yourself. That gives some more insulation to your sleeping situation. So that's very important. Also having a jacket and a stocking cap, gloves, things like that. When you get to your camp spot at the end of the day, you're probably sweaty, and it's important to get out of all your sweaty clothes. Grab your dry clothes out of your bag, put your coat on so you don't get chilled. So The other thing to keep in mind too when you're hiking for 98.6, got to have a raincoat and rain pants, because if you start getting wet with rain, that will give you hypothermia very quickly, and it can creep up on you without you knowing it, or being fully cognizant of it. Like, it can affect your thinking, it can affect your fine motor skills, it can affect your decision making. So it's important to stay warm and dry. So not only do you get to camp, you take your wet clothes off, put your warm clothes on, get your tent up, and get your sleeping area prepared. But then in the morning, you've got to do the opposite, which is often a huge moment of suck in the morning, is getting out of your warm clothes, putting on your other clothes. Sometimes they're wet, but you have to do it. You got to keep something dry in your pack. Or, the worst, what I find the worst is putting cold, wet socks on again. But you've got to do that, and then tear everything down and put it away. The most problematic isn't 25 degrees and snowing. It's 40 degrees and raining, because it can soak everything. It's hard to get dry. It's hard to get warm. And it's the worst kind of weather. I'd much rather deal with 25 degrees and snow than a cold rain, persistent rain. So that's 98.6, and it involves a lot of different elements, but it's critical to being safe out here.